What if tonight a single decision inside one of America's largest banking institutions suddenly triggered a wave of speculation powerful enough to shake the entire Iraqi Dinar community awake, leaving millions of holders wondering whether Chase Bank could actually be preparing for a shift in IQD exchange readiness and what that might mean for the long-discussed possibility of a revaluation? And as we explore this unfolding situation together, you'll want to listen closely, because this story is not just about rumors or hopeful predictions, but about the real financial signals, international banking patterns, and policy shifts that observers must understand to separate fact from fantasy. So before we dive deep into the truth behind these claims, make sure you like this video, share it with others following the Dinar conversation, and subscribe for daily updates, because clarity is your most powerful tool in a market filled with noise. And what we are seeing right now is a blend of speculation mixed with real global developments that deserve careful attention, not blind excitement. And the first thing every viewer must recognize is that the IQD remains a regulated national currency controlled solely by the Central Bank of Iraq, which maintains its policy based on economic stability, inflation control, and foreign reserves rather than sudden external triggers. So when Chase Bank or any major U.S. bank becomes part of the conversation, people must understand the difference between banking readiness and actual currency revaluation, because a bank can adjust its internal systems, update foreign exchange compliance, or prepare for global currency integrations without creating or signaling an RV. And up to this moment, there is absolutely no verified evidence showing that Chase has officially activated IQD exchange processes or plans to introduce IQD conversion at a new rate. Yet speculation arises because global banks do monitor and prepare for changes in foreign currencies, especially when those currencies belong to nations undergoing financial reform. And Iraq has indeed been implementing reforms aimed at modernizing its financial infrastructure, transitioning from older dollar auction mechanisms toward transparent electronic banking, digital payment systems, and compliance-focused international trade procedures. And these reforms matter because they indicate Iraq's attempt to align its banking operations with global standards, which could in the long term support a stronger currency or structured redenomination. But none of these reforms, according to publicly available sources, point toward an overnight revaluation event. And observers who follow IF reports will notice that the projected exchange rate for 2025 and 2026 remains close to 300 dinars per US dollar, a sign that the international community views stability, not sudden appreciation, as Iraq's primary monetary path. Yet at the same time, Iraq's government continues to invest in digital platforms, financial oversight, and economic diversification, all of which may slowly build a stronger foundation analysts say could one day support currency adjustments. But that process is methodical, not explosive. And this is why claims about Chase Bank triggering an overnight RV must be taken cautiously, because no commercial bank possesses the authority to revalue a sovereign currency, and any real change would come only from the Central Bank of Iraq coordinating with international partners through formal channels. So when viewers here talk about banking screens updating or private notifications circulating online, they must distinguish speculation from verifiable institutional data. And although the dream of an RV remains alive in communities around the world, the factual environment today reflects gradual reforms rather than sudden transformations. And all of this makes it crucial for anyone interested in the dinar to stay educated, avoid misleading hype, and base decisions on transparent, globally recognized information rather than unverified rumors. Because understanding the economic and political condition behind the currency gives you the power to evaluate claims more effectively and reduces the risk of falling into deceptive narratives. And this video aims to guide you through that process step by step with honesty and balanced perspective, so you can stay informed without being misled. So as we continue forward, keep your expectations grounded, your mind open, and your focus on what is real, not what is simply repeated online. As we move deeper into this unfolding situation, it becomes essential to understand why Chase Bank or any major U.S. financial institution even enters the conversation when discussing the Iraqi dinar. Because while commercial banks do not control currency values, they do play an important role in global financial networks, and their actions, such as system updates, foreign currency desk adjustments, compliance changes, back-end integration with international exchange platforms, often spark speculation among dinar watchers who see these operational shifts as signs of something larger. Yet the truth is that such banks routinely prepare for potential global currency changes long before they happen, not because they know a revaluation is imminent, but because they must maintain readiness for any international currency movement that could affect liquidity, compliance, customer operations, foreign exchange regulation. And this is where misunderstandings begin, because routine updates can often appear from the outside as major signals, especially in a community where people are searching for clues. But responsible analysis requires a closer look at what the Central Bank of Iraq itself is doing, because no bank outside Iraq can set or change the IQD value. And every credible economist agrees that the only entity capable of launching a revaluation or redenomination is the CBI through formal policy changes implemented under financial law and international agreement. Yet what keeps hope alive for many is the undeniable truth that Iraq is working on foundational reforms that could eventually support meaningful adjustments to its currency. And among these reforms, the shift away from the dollar auction is one of the most significant, because for years the auction system was accused of corruption, inefficiency, and market manipulation. But in 2025, Iraq has begun transitioning its banks to correspondent banking relationships that create clearer, more transparent foreign trade operations. And this kind of structural change signals to global financial institutions that Iraq is serious about modernizing and aligning with international standards, which is why banks such as JP Morgan, Citibank, and other global players have previously assisted Iraq. And while Chase specifically has not announced any new partnership or IQD exchange readiness, the pattern of international engagement with Iraq's financial sector naturally attracts attention, because when large banks interact with a country's monetary system, people often assume that an RV could be happening, even though such interactions typically occur for compliance, trade, and regulatory purposes rather than currency revaluations. And at the same time, Iraq has been pushing digital modernization, including electronic payment systems, biometric banking verification, and fintech infrastructure that enable more controlled, regulated financial activity, which long-term analysts often interpret as the groundwork required before any significant currency reform can occur. Because without transparency, stability, and reliable internal controls, a revaluation would be economically dangerous for the country. And it's important for viewers to remember that the IMF's projections for Iraq through 2025 and 2026 are built on stability rather than aggressive appreciation of the dinar, meaning international experts believe Iraq's best path forward is controlled, gradual financial strengthening rather than a shock-based revaluation. And these projections are not based on rumor, but on assessments of Iraq's oil dependency, its fiscal gaps, its economic diversification challenges, and the slow but ongoing progress toward financial modernization. Yet this does not eliminate the possibility of future changes. It simply frames them in realistic timelines rather than sudden overnight shifts. And this is why communities following the dinar must remain grounded, because while speculation spreads quickly, official information changes slowly, and misinterpretation can create expectations that overshadow reality. But by understanding that Iraq is in a multi-year reform phase, you gain a more accurate lens for evaluating claims. And this allows you to see that an RV is not impossible, but also not aligned with current public policy or economic data. And when considering Chase Bank's name being mentioned across forums, videos, and online discussions, it's crucial to recognize that global banks constantly update their systems for currency codes, compliance rules, and back-end integration, and these updates often occur without any public announcement. So when someone claims a particular bank is preparing for IQD, it may simply reflect routine operational adjustments rather than secret revaluation planning. And this difference matters because viewers must avoid jumping to conclusions based on ambiguous information, especially in a market where misinformation spreads quickly. And this video's purpose is to help you remain aware, balanced, and informed as we continue to examine all factors shaping the dinar conversation today. To truly understand why the idea of Chase Bank or any major U.S. institution activating Iraqi Dinar exchange readiness captures so much attention, we need to look closely at the global environment surrounding Iraq's financial position and how international systems interact with currencies undergoing reform. Because Iraq today is in the midst of a complex transition where its economy, monetary policy, and foreign exchange structure are being reshaped step by step. And as these reforms unfold, global banks naturally monitor Iraq's development, since international banking systems rely on accurate, up-to-date currency frameworks. And anytime a country updates regulations, restructures financial controls, strengthens reserves, or adjusts exchange mechanisms, it triggers internal reviews within global banks, which can create signals that appear meaningful from the outside but are actually just standard compliance processes that occur long before any potential currency adjustment. And when we examine Iraq's situation more deeply, we find that the Central Bank of Iraq is focusing heavily on stability because the country has spent years battling inflation, dollar outflows, corruption within financial channels, and inefficiencies in its currency distribution system. So today, Iraq's strategy is to reinforce its monetary foundation through digital payments, international banking partnerships, stronger anti-money laundering protocols, and modernization of domestic financial institutions. And each of these reforms represents a building block that could eventually support a stronger dinar, but none of them indicate that an overnight RV is underway, which is why analysts emphasize patience and realism when interpreting policy signals. And although some dinar supporters hope that a rapid shift could be triggered by external banking readiness, the truth is that a sovereign currency cannot be revalued simply because a foreign bank updates its database or prepares its foreign exchange desk. Since official revaluation requires national law, monetary policy approval, international coordination, and economic justification, and no public record today shows that Iraq is finalizing such a dramatic move. Yet many people misunderstand normal banking updates as preparation for a major event because global banks update their currency tables, ISO codes, exchange interfaces, stubborn IFT integration systems, and compliance filters regularly, especially when dealing with currencies from regions undergoing reform. And since Iraq has been making steady progress toward modernizing its financial sector, these routine updates may appear to some observers as hidden signals, but responsible analysis demands recognizing that correlation does not equal causation. And even though discussions about Chase Bank often explode online, fueling theories about insider knowledge or secret readiness, the factual landscape shows no confirmation that any U.S. bank is preparing to exchange IQD at a new rate. And this is why viewers must stay focused on verified information rather than speculation, because Iraq's economic trajectory is defined by practical reforms, not mysterious overnight triggers. Yet it is also true that Iraq's long-term strategy seems aimed at strengthening the value of the dinar by reducing its dependence on the U.S. dollar, improving domestic banking access, increasing foreign investment flows, and stabilizing inflation. And these efforts are already showing early signs of progress, which is why some observers believe that Iraq is positioning itself for a gradual appreciation or redenomination in the future once economic conditions become stable enough to support it. And while this perspective does not guarantee a revaluation, it does illustrate that Iraq is moving in a direction that could eventually allow for meaningful currency adjustments based on real economic performance instead of speculation. And another reason IQD watchers stay hopeful is Iraq's ongoing effort to restore international credibility after years of financial turbulence, because credibility is one of the most important factors in currency strength, and Iraq's government knows that a stronger dinar requires trust from global markets, which is why transparency and compliance measures have become central to their strategy. And as these changes progress, international banks, including large institutions like Chase, naturally keep Iraq on their monitoring radar to ensure that global financial channels remain synchronized with evolving Iraqi regulations. And while this may create the appearance of preparation for revaluation, it is better understood as routine operational awareness. And for viewers who hope the RV could happen soon, the key message is that hope should remain balanced with reality. Because while Iraq is laying a stronger financial foundation, the timeline for any transformational currency shift is far more likely to be gradual than sudden. And understanding this allows you to evaluate every claim you hear with clear judgment, so you stay informed without falling into hype-driven narratives that cause confusion and disappointment. And this deeper awareness empowers you to follow the IQD story with intelligent expectation rather than emotional reaction. As we reach the final stage of this important breakdown, it becomes even clearer why conversations about Chase Bank and the possibility of an overnight Iraqi dinar revaluation continue to gain momentum. Because in every currency community, people naturally search for patterns, clues, and early indicators that might point toward major financial changes. Yet the most important truth that must be understood is that real currency shifts never come from speculation alone, but from structured economic conditions, verified institutional actions, and transparent government policies. And when we examine Iraq's position through an objective lens, we see a nation working steadily toward financial reform rather than preparing for a sudden shock event. Because Iraq's economy remains deeply tied to oil revenues, infrastructure rebuilding, anti-corruption efforts, and the development of stable financial channels. And these areas require time, planning, and policy execution before any significant appreciation of the dinar could be justified. And meanwhile, international banks like Chase operate within strict regulatory frameworks that prevent them from engaging in speculative or unauthorized currency movements, which is why claims that a commercial bank could trigger or activate an RV overnight do not align with how global monetary systems actually function, because the only institution capable of adjusting the dinar's value remains the Central Bank of Iraq, which has repeatedly emphasized the importance of gradual stabilization instead of sudden revaluation. And what many observers overlook is how interconnected the world's banking networks truly are, because large banks continually update their foreign exchange databases for hundreds of currencies. And these updates are not signs of insider knowledge, but simply part of maintaining their system's accuracy and compliance requirements. Yet in communities that monitor every detail surrounding the dinar, these normal updates sometimes become misinterpreted as hidden signals, especially when people combine them with Iraq's ongoing financial modernization efforts. And it is true that Iraq is moving toward a more transparent, regulated, and internationally aligned banking system, which includes improving cross-border transaction processes, strengthening reserve management, expanding digital financial channels, and enhancing the efficiency of domestic banks. And these reforms absolutely matter because strong monetary foundations are necessary before any country can consider currency restructuring. Even if Iraq is preparing for long-term improvements, this does not mean the revaluation will happen suddenly or secretly, because any legitimate shift of that scale would need to be coordinated with international partners, communicated through official channels, and implemented in a way that supports economic stability for Iraq's citizens, businesses, and global investors. And this is where the responsible perspective becomes essential for dinar watchers, because hope without understanding can lead to disappointment. But informed patience allows you to follow developments with clarity and confidence, especially when you recognize that Iraq is not resisting change, but simply moving at the pace required to ensure that any future currency decisions are sustainable and beneficial for the nation. And part of that process involves reducing dependency on the US dollar, strengthening domestic production, and diversifying revenue streams beyond oil, goals that Iraq has openly committed to through multiple reform strategies. And as these reforms progress, international institutions like the IMF continue to project a stable rather than rapidly appreciating dinar, indicating that the global financial community expects steady consolidation rather than dramatic overnight adjustments. Yet despite all this, the interest surrounding IQD persists because Iraq is one of the few countries undergoing a unique combination of reconstruction, modernization, regulatory overhaul, international reintegration. And such environments naturally draw speculation, since history shows that nations emerging from prolonged instability sometimes undergo significant monetary adjustments once reforms reach maturity. And although there is no verified data today confirming such a transition for Iraq in the immediate future, the possibility of long-term restructuring remains open, which is why balanced awareness is crucial for anyone following this journey. And by staying focused on verifiable information rather than speculation, you position yourself to understand developments accurately as they unfold. And with that understanding, you become part of a community that values truth, clarity, and responsible analysis over hype and false promises. And that is exactly why this video exists, to equip you with a deeper, clearer, and more grounded perspective on the IQD story, so you can navigate it with confidence, realism, and informed curiosity as Iraq continues shaping its financial future in a world that is watching closely with hope and caution. And as we conclude this comprehensive update, remember that staying informed is your strongest advantage in any currency conversation. So if you want more daily insights, verified updates, and clear explanations without hype, make sure to like this video, share it with fellow IQD watchers, and subscribe to the channel with notifications on so you never miss a new breakdown. And don't forget to comment below with your thoughts, questions, or topics you want covered next, because your engagement helps keep this community strong, informed, and moving forward together.